listen and follow through with just one of the things that I mentioned to you today when we started talking about tax lien sales, that you can change the position that you're in right now, well, the position that you'll be in a year from now, okay? That's my promise today. But before I get into it, there is a theme happening. I don't know if you guys picked up on it. Terry, stock market investor. She said that she left her education career and she became a full-time entrepreneur, yes? Siobhan was in corporate law and transitioned to also being an entrepreneur. Danielle, where'd she go? She left her job also to go into real estate full-time. Joanna is a full-time entrepreneur. Bahia, full-time entrepreneur. Courtney, full-time entrepreneur and full-time corporatepreneur. That's what we call it. So I'm talking about this theme of entrepreneurship because I'm not saying that everybody in here needs to go and start a business, but I kind of am saying that everybody in here needs to go and start a business. It doesn't mean you have to leave your full-time job, because I know when I made that transition, I so wasn't ready. And it's weird because I literally prayed to be laid off. I worked at the equity office downtown. They were doing, they always give it some weird name when they're laying folks off, right? They call it right sizing, upsizing, shifting. But anyway, they were letting people go. And so they laid off my entire audit department. And I remember thinking, like, man, I hope I'm next. I don't want to be, I just want to be fired. I'm so ready to be done. And then I got fired, well, not fired, but laid off. And I was like, oh, snap. I was not ready. I got corporate, they bought all of our stock. They cashed it out. So I had like $30,000 in my Fidelity account. And I was like, man, I'm so rich. Oh my God. And it's so funny. I was like, how old was I when this happened? This was 2007. So I was 20 some years old. And I thought I had so much money. And so I was also doing my first flip at the same time. And I got my first check from flipping, and it was $26,908.57. So you know, I am like, oh my gosh, I am rich. But how many of you know that you can't ever go farther than your mindset? Yes. Meaning, I grew up broke, one of 5 children, single parent household. Father was kind of in and out, and there was never enough of anything. And so while nobody ever sat me down and said, hey, Danielle, life's hard, you know, bills come, money is hard to come by, sometimes the utilities might get turned off. Nobody ever told me that those lessons in those words, but because of my environment, that was the lessons that I learned. So I had this scarcity mindset, and then you come into money. And that's why I've never been the person to look at the athletes and celebrities and amazing when they go through hundreds of millions of dollars, because it doesn't matter how much money you're blessed with. If you're blessed with 50,000 or 60,000 at one time, as I was, or 600 million or 600,000, the end result will always be the same. Your outside environment will always reflect what you really believe inside. So I really believe that I didn't deserve any money. So baby, let me tell you, I went on vacation, got married, went to Jamaica, went to every concert, I think, for the next 2 years. Like, I saw everybody, I saw every show, and before I knew it, that money was gone. Like, I don't even think I paid off any debt. No, I paid off my car. No, I didn't even pay off my full car balance. I paid like $3,000 on my Monte Carlo, and then the rest of the money I just spent. And so I say all that to say that mindset is important. But I do think that we were better off collectively when most of us were entrepreneurs. And while we're talking about that, let me just say this. We heard Bahia talk about the Asians and the Jamaicans and all these other cultures and how they get together and do things, and we don't do that. But how many of you know that that's not actually true? Does anybody know that? Let me tell you why it's not true. Every time historically, and I don't want to, at the risk of sounding like I think the new phrase is HERTEP, at the risk of sounding like one of those, let me just say this. Every time historically we band together to create a movement or some type of shift and make things happen, it has always been destroyed. So it's not that we don't do these things. So can we stop with this narrative that everybody else just naturally does it and we just, that is not the reality, okay? Can we at least agree on that for today? All right. Moving on, but back to the entrepreneurship thing. There's a guy who I interviewed on my YouTube channel not too long ago. His name is Samuel Genius, and I'm bringing this up because it ties in perfectly with what we're going talking about today. And he was is a software developer. He worked at a company. They were paying him $60,000 a year. He created this product. How about the company licensed his product out at $1 million per license? Per license. So he was getting paid 60, and they were, every time they sold the license to a different corporation, $1 million. So of course he left, and he started his own company. It's called UShare 360, which is basically to compete with Entrepreneur and other CRMs. But I say all that to say that even though you might be being paid really, really well at your corporate job, might be getting paid, you know, that magic 6 figures, 150, 180, you're always going to be underpaid because that's just how capitalism works. If they can't get at least 5 or 10 times their investment from what they're paying you, then who gotta go? You gotta go, right? So I just wanted to put all that out there. Just you know, it's not true that we historically don't band together to get things done, nor is it true that, you know, everybody can't be an entrepreneur per se. I don't think it's for everyone, but entrepreneurship is nothing more than solving problems. It's just coming up with a solution to a problem. And how many of us can do that? Everybody, right? All right. So let's talk about real estate. Let's talk about tax lien properties. This is my area of expertise. So I've been doing tax lien investing since 2014 or 15, somewhere in there. And I am a huge proponent of tax lien investing. I think that, I often think back to when I first heard about it like 12 years ago, and I was like, oh, that's such a scam. That's not true. You can't buy properties for that cheap. I have to go to Bank of America to get a mortgage to acquire a property. And here I am now, of course, buying these properties without going through a traditional bank. And I say that because I made the mistake that I think a lot of us make, and that I assumed that because I couldn't do something, that nobody else knew how to do it either. Right. So I missed out on a good 10 years plus of returns and investments, and I say that because I don't want you to make that same mistake, okay? The pros of tax lien investing is that, let me back up. Of course, cheaper than traditional home purchasing, no credit score requirements, no real estate license required. Everybody thinks you need a real estate license to do stuff in real estate. The only thing that a real estate license does is allow you to represent buyers and sellers. That's it. It doesn't teach you investing, it doesn't teach you tax liens, doesn't teach you how to flip, it doesn't do any of that. You actually own the property versus owning an interest in the property. So what does that mean? Well, it means that instead of paying Bank of America or Chase or your local credit union to pay off the property that you quote unquote own, the tax lien property, you actually own the property with no debt. I was listening to Les Brown the other day, and he said, what's the fastest way to get back on your feet is to miss 2 car payments. And that's the same thing is true. The same thing is true about your house, right? If you miss the first 2 payments to any lender, you're now in what's called pre-foreclosure, PFC, pre-foreclosure. And then it gets better. That information is actually public. Not to the general public per se, but to people who have a real estate license. I can go and do a search by a zip code and see who's missed, 3 months of mortgage payments. That's a real thing. So when you start getting those postcards in the mail, or when I used to go to properties, people would be like, what you doing to my property? Ain't nothing going on. You know what's going on in this property. So let's not, play this game. But again, you own the property free and clear. Some of the disadvantages is that the process can be complex to go from tax lien to tax deed, depending upon where you invest. You don't need an attorney. I say that you need an attorney, but you don't actually have to have one to help you navigate the process. But every person that I know, even the ones that I've trained, who've not used an attorney, they have not been successful. We have this thing, and I don't want to say in our community because I think it's just an American thing, where we feel like if we just work hard and we can figure it out ourselves, and that's true. But how much time are you wasting, and how much money are you losing? My other area of expertise is I do the repairs and maintenance for foreclosed properties. It's called property preservation, and we do about $300,000 to $400,000 a year in revenue in that business. And I have people who've been following me for years, literally years, researching, analyzing, going to YouTube, stalking my videos, sending me emails, asking me the same questions over and over and over. And I'm like, boo, I am not here to answer your question 5 years in a row. Just think about all the money you have missed out on. I know for an absolute fact, had you started me 5 years ago, you'd be up at least $500,000, at least. And when I say that, some people are like, oh, she cocky. Oh, she arrogant. These are just facts. This is literally just facts. So if you're researching, analyzing, just go pay somebody, right? If you want to learn how to trade actively, just go pay for Terry's course or pay for Courtney's course. You want to know how to do budgeting and finance and life insurance, just go hire Joanna. Like, you don't have to sit and figure these things out and remain broke during the process. You have to pay attention to, I should say that there's no refunds for pretty much any tax lien sale, which makes sense because they're used to generate money. You have to pay attention to the tax ID numbers and not the address, and that's where the education comes in at, because the auctions go by parcel ID numbers, not the address. So you could have an address and you'd be like, oh, this house is nice, this is my dream house, and I can get it for $3,000. But that could very well be a vacant lot, or a piece of sidewalk, or a driveway. And it happens at every tax sale in America all across the country every single day. There was a story that came out, but there's multiple stories like this, but there's one that came out in Indiana. And the lady said that Indiana has a sale where the starting bids are $500 in March, every March. And she said that, I bid on this house, it was my dream home, and it was so beautiful. And, she got the property and looked great on the outside, according to the Google Street View. The back of the house was missing. and she was salty about it. And so she did end up getting her money back. But had I been the judge, I would not have given her money back. And I'm going to tell you why. For one, there's such thing as due diligence. For two, you should never expect to be able to buy a property based off of a Google Street View and think that it's, legitimate. You should never expect to have a home in move-in condition that only costs you $500. Like all these things, even if you're new, so there's new and inexperienced, and then there's just lazy. This is lazy. And I have a problem with lazy investing or lazy, any lazy activity. So I wouldn't give her money back. But that's just me. The properties may be occupied. That can happen. You're not able to go see the inside of the property. So for some people, they're like, oh my God, I can't see the inside of the property. What should I do? I can't figure it out. So what you do is, you drive by the property, you stalk the property, you talk to the neighbors, use your common sense. If the outside of the property looks good, you can pretty much rest assured the inside is going to be decent. If somebody lives there, I used to say 9 out of 10 times it's halfway decent, but because of my preservation work, I've seen people living in squalor and people that are hoarders and people who literally, I've seen a house where they never took the trash out ever. Like it was just filled floor to ceiling with trash. So I can't say 9 out of 10 times is decent, maybe 7 out of 10 times. So this is my strategy, which I think that you all should do. Become an expert in one market. People always say, where should I invest? What should I do? I heard this was good. I was listening to so-and-so on YouTube. But pick one. There are deals everywhere. It's not a question of can you find a deal. It's only a question of how long it's going to take you. So pick one market. If you live in Houston, pick the greater Houston area or some one of the close adjacent counties. Study the prior sales history, only for the last 6 months though. And the reason why that's critical is because you guys tell me, and I'm pretty sure it's like this, but in Chicago, where I'm from, there's a lot of major streets, and one of the streets is 111th Street. 111th Street goes past a set of railroad tracks. On one side of 111th Street, beautiful. The other side of 111th Street, honey, totally different market. I think every major city is probably set up like that. So that's why I'm saying you should only look at the last 6 months and make sure that you know the area, you know the boundary lines. Every neighborhood has boundary lines. And if you're familiar with Houston, I would suggest you start with Houston. Again, I'm talking about lazy investors don't make successful investors. You gotta do more work than just clicking around on your computer, at home. And this is my formula to calculate market value for pretty much any market anywhere in the country, is to look at 3 to 5 sold comps in the last 90 days within a 4-block radius. So typically a half a mile. So anything outside of those parameters, I stay away from. So if you follow this basic formula, you'll be able to assess value for about 90% of the markets pretty much anywhere in the country. You'd be surprised at how many folks will see this and be like, but this property sold 9 months ago, or this property is a mile away, and it's not pretty much the same. It either is or isn't, and this formula works. And the funny thing about this formula though is that if you master it, you'll be able to you'll be better at running comps than the average real estate broker. And it's weird for me to say this because I am in real estate. I'm a licensed broker. I've been licensed since 2006. I'm actually a managing broker. But we aren't taught how to run comps, you guys. Everyone thinks that you're this real estate. Who just got their real estate license? Somebody did.
No, I just finished. I haven't taken my question.
Okay. But did you learn anything about how to assess market value?
No, my situation is a little different.
Okay. You don't even learn how to write a contract? Like these are
I
things,
did the contracts and all that kind of stuff.
but in Illinois, these are things that you're just generally not taught as a real estate agent. As when you get your license, people are like, oh my God, you're an expert. You're like, kinda. But if you follow this formula, you'll be able to calculate market values a lot better than the average real estate agent. So assess your risk tolerance, determine your exit strategy. If you are risk averse, you should be buying properties that are tax deed properties is what I recommend because there's no waiting and no redemption period. Pick states with short redemption periods. The redemption is a time frame that the owner has to come back and say, hey, I got all this money. I can repay all the back taxes. Don't take my house, blah, blah, blah. So pick states with redemptions of 1 year or less, which would be places like Louisiana, Michigan, and Indiana. Actually, those are deed states. So when you buy a deed state, you're actually buying the property or the land outright. It's a done deal. There's no wait. And some of those sales are actually online. I'll show you the websites in just a second. Secure your attorney first. If you don't know how to find an attorney, go to the sale. They're always hanging out there looking for your business. If you're risk averse, you're going to want to wholesale it, sell it as is, or you can rent the property for monthly cash flow. If you don't like the idea of being a landlord, then you're just gonna wholesale. Wholesaling is when you're selling the property, you're not really doing a whole bunch of work to it, just getting rid of it. You don't make as much money, but you do make some profit. And this last line I had to put in there. If you only got $1,000 and you need that $1,000 back immediately, this is not the investment strategy for you. All right? I'm not saying it to discourage anyone or to make anyone feel bad or ashamed, but the number one question that I get in my inbox is, can you turn this $3,000 into $10,000 and I'm like, I can't do none of that. I'm not the person to help you with that. And then figure out how much access you have to your actual funds that you have on hand and also credit as well. You can't use a credit card typically at the auctions, but you can get an advance and go to the auction with that money. Okay. So these are some of my recommended websites. Again, some of the sales are actually online, so you could be at home, you could be here, you could be in Jamaica, anywhere you have a Wi-Fi connection actually bidding on properties. It is a beautiful thing when it works out. There are actually, most people that I've talked to that work in the counties, they often remark on the investors from out of the country who are buying in the United States. So in Chicago, a lot of Chinese investors are buying there. The same for Louisiana, the same for Texas, the same for Tennessee, where I just got a property for, well, I didn't just get it, but I'm waiting on the deed. I got a property for $5,000. There are investors there, what did the lady say? From Brazil. So you don't even have to live in a country to be able to do it. Now, granted, it's easier if you do live here. I think you have to have a partner that's local, but they're making it happen if they don't live here. Probably don't even speak English that well, right? That's not being stereotypical, but that's generally how it works. Probably don't even have, the best amount of money saved or the best credit, but yet here they are buying properties where we live and we won't go. So when Danielle said, live in your neighborhood before it's cute, that's it. Like, that's literally the ticket. But we, for whatever reason, I will say we don't like to do that. We like to floss, we like to look fly, we like to, be in what's popping. But in Chicago in particular, there's a neighborhood called Bronzeville. Bronzeville is like, Bronzeville is still kind of the hood. I can't say too much because I'm still licensed, but it's like great properties and turn around the corner, you're like, oh, okay, let me go back around the corner. But my point is, the properties are selling now in Bronzeville for $700,000. And like 5 years ago, nothing, didn't even exist. How many of you know markets like that in Houston, where that's happening? I always say, and when I'm doing this talk, that we like to act like gentrification just fell out of the sky. Like, oh my God, they're gentrifying our neighborhoods. What should we do? But the truth of the matter is, it's a very long process. Like Danielle said, it is public information. You just got to go to the right websites. Like, literally, it's public information. The plans for the city, the focus for the budget, the allocations, the opportunity, it's all out there. But for whatever reason, we just like to act like we can't find nothing on the internet but stupid shit. I don't understand that. Oh my God. Jesus, I didn't even want to say that. But it's public information. So these websites here, I put them up here because people like to come to these workshops and say, well, we didn't get anything actionable, and we don't know where to go, what to do. This is where you start. I like these cities because they're affordable. A lot of the sales are online. The process is relatively straightforward. And between now and next year, for example, Louisiana and Tennessee have sales once a month. So if you can't make something happen between now and this time next year, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you, especially given the price point. So Cook County is actually, that's not a deed state, that's a lien state, it's like a 2.5-year redemption. But it has a very high interest rate of like, I think it's 18% a year. So if you invest, let's say $100,000, year one, you're at $118,000. Year two, another $18,000. So people actually invest in tax lien sales just to get the ROI, because you can't get that really anywhere else. You can get in the stock market, but it's not guaranteed in the stock market. These are guaranteed returns. Shelby County, Memphis. I feel like most people have some type of connection to Memphis, Tennessee for whatever reason. But the properties there start at a couple $1,000s, a couple isn't two, and it goes up from there. So you can spend $2,000, have one of my clients, she spent $20,000. But either way, you can find something. Louisiana, $8,000 to $10,000 and up. Michigan has online sales they start in July, they're actually ending in December. But those properties the properties and land are very cheap as well. And the last two things I'll say is that everybody is not going to go with you, and that's okay. Because I know in our community, we like to have proof, and we like to have other people do stuff before we do it, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna do that. So sometimes you do have to step out and be the first person. And then also, as far as accountability, I mean, I've given you the websites and advised you to get an attorney, but as far as accountability, I will say that I think that you should already be self-motivated. I don't think anybody can give you motivation. So when I work with clients, I don't feel like it's my job to make you feel good or make you feel empowered or motivate you and uplift you. I mean, I'll do that by default through some of the things that we do together, but that's not my role. Like, you should already be motivated. I had a guy email me, he said, you know, how should I stay motivated when blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I don't know what motivates you. You have to figure out why you're doing it in the first place, and then you'll build from there. Once you know why you're doing it, everything else becomes easy. For me, I can't go back to corporate. I'm unemployable. Haven't been in a job since 2007. It's almost 13 years. I go wherever I want. I can homeschool. I brought my children with me to these events. I've done it twice this year in Philly and New York. And where else did those kids go? I forget. But they were there. And I can't go backwards. So once you get that taste of like, oh, this the other side, it becomes very, very difficult to go back. So I work every day to make sure that I never have to go back into corporate America, because again, they're always going to underpay you. All right? That's my time, guys.
What did I tell you? So she gave me some options when it comes to real estate, right?
I don't know how to do
Now,
this.
Danielle did mention some great points.
Let's just close it out.
What we can do with our money.